Welcome to Novara Live. I'm Michael Walker and I'm joined by Aaron Bastani. Aaron, how are you doing?
Very well, Michael. I like your t-shirt. Greek
Yes.
themed.
Does it say Athens? I don't know. It's in Greek and I've never known what it said. I didn't get this on holiday. It was one of my old housemates' t-shirts.
It's all Greek to me, Michael.
The reason I'm wearing it is actually because I'm halfway in between moving house and I don't know where anything is. So if I look a bit schlubby, that's why. We've got a great show for you tonight. Well, big stories, actually. Israelis have gone on strike over hostage deaths in Gaza. I'm going to be speaking to Gideon Levy, which is very exciting. In Germany, the far right have won in a state election for the first time since the Nazis. Incredibly worrying sentence to be reading out. And Jeremy Corbyn has formed an alliance with independent MPs in Parliament. Stay tuned for all of that. The Labour government has completed its review of British arms exports to Israel. This was Foreign Secretary David Lammy speaking in the House of Commons this afternoon.
It is with regret that I inform the House today the assessment I have received leaves me unable to conclude anything other than that for certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. I have informed my right honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, and he is therefore today announcing the suspension of around 30 from a total of approximately 350 to Israel as required under the Export Controls Act.
So as Lammy said there, this is 30 out of 350 export licenses, so it only affects about 10% of licenses for arms exports issued by the UK. It will affect parts for fighter planes, helicopters and drones, which will have their export licenses immediately put on hold. But there are really massive holes in the plan. Politico reports this. Items facilitating ground targeting were also included, but absent from the suspension was components for F-35 stealth fighter jets, except where parts go directly to Israel. The majority of such parts go into a global pool, and it was not deemed possible to bar those without denting the global fleet. Licenses covering arms not being used by the Israel Defense Forces in the current conflict are not included in the suspension. These include training aircraft and naval equipment, as well as items for civilians such as food testing, chemicals, and telecoms components. David Lammy was clear that the decision does not amount to an arms embargo on Israel, and British officials were keen to stress that they have not arbitrated on whether Israel has actually breached international humanitarian law, but instead the assessment found a clear risk of violations. Aaron, how significant do you think this is?
Great question. I mean, this seems to me like a classic New Labour or Labour right, trying to please everybody, pleasing nobody kind of centrist outcome. You'll have people who are Zionists or pro-Israel saying this is absolutely outrageous. We have a clear picture of what's going on. We've got a direction of travel. First UNRWA, then the ICJ. Now you're having the beginning of the end of trade relations between the UK and Israel. That's what they'll say. And then on the other side, which I'm far more sympathetic to, how on earth can you only cut 10% of these contracts when you're dealing with a country which is clearly engaging in ethnic cleansing, most recently in Jenin? When you're seeing war crimes on an industrial scale, when you're seeing, let's be honest, people are saying 40,000 plus deaths, it could be 100,000 plus deaths, maybe more. How on earth can you still maintain 90% of sales to that country? So to me, Michael, it stinks of a typical New Labour fudge. Politically, it's a fudge. Now, of course, Lammy would say we're trying to adhere to international law, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I think Labour moved on things like UNRWA and the ICJ precisely because they came under immense political pressure prior to the last general election, such that 5 independents won primarily because of, not entirely because of, their positions on Gaza vis Labour. Jess Phillips almost lost, Wes Streeting almost lost. And I think Labour's steps, which have been positive, there are some, in government relating to Gaza, are precisely because of that pressure on them in the general election. And I think this acknowledges that. But my goodness, it's not going to stop it. It's not going to stop it. Oh, we stopped 10% of the arms sales to Israel. If Gaza really matters to you, if war crimes really matter to you, if ethnic cleansing really matters to you, please vote for us. I don't think that's going to work on the doorstep somehow.
The reason why it doesn't make it doesn't seem like it's going to be particularly effectual with the F-35 stealth fighter jets, is because we're part of some sort of international program. I think they often go via the Dutch. So Britain is saying we're only going to suspend exports if they go directly from Britain to Israel, but actually nearly all of the parts that end up in Israel go via a third country, and we're saying, well, we don't want to mess with that. So, if they order the parts via a third country, that's fine with us. Obviously, an arms embargo means you're going much further, and you're saying we are going to make sure that no arms get to that country. And if by chance some arms that go via a third country get there, there will be consequences, there will be punishments, and the UK say, oh, we're not quite up for that. So to me, it does seem symbolic, and symbolic not in a good way. Symbolic in the sense of, it seems to me they're trying to appease, some of their base while not really doing anything of any significance. I'm unimpressed. David Lammy's arms sales announcement comes amid the biggest anti-government protests Israel has seen since its assault on Gaza began 11 months ago. Trade unions across the country have shut down schools, airports, and offices in a general strike, which leaders say is necessary to, quote, shake those who need to be shaken. The Tel Aviv court has now ordered the strike to end. Protests over the weekend in Tel Aviv and other major Israeli cities have continued today. Demonstrators have accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of sacrificing Israeli hostages held in Gaza rather than reach a ceasefire deal with Hamas. Fires were lit, traffic was stopped, and there were clashes with the police amid anger over the news that the bodies of 6 more hostages were retrieved from Gaza on Saturday afternoon. Some of those demonstrators explained why they were protesting.
People feel that Netanyahu is stopping the deal from political reasons. We don't feel like they represent us, and we don't feel like they represent anything but their own political interests. We all feel like it's enough, and we want all of the hostages back. I feel like we had enough war, and maybe it's time to try other means.
The most important thing is to bring the hostages home when they are alive. That's what's important to us, not anything else.
I don't think he's good enough, but related to this war, he doesn't do all the necessary things to release all the hostages and bring them back home. The first thing of all is to bring the hostages back to Israel and for the Israeli people to stop the war, and we can live in peace together.
The discovery of the bodies of the 6 hostages may mean that a ceasefire is further away than ever. 5 of the 6 were taken from the Nova Music Festival, including dual US citizen Hirsch Goldberg-Polin, top left, whose parents spoke at last month's Democratic Convention in Chicago. According to Israel's Ministry of Health, the 6 were shot at close range. Israeli and US officials have confirmed that 3 of them, including Goldberg-Polin, were expected to be released as part of a ceasefire deal. In response to the retrieval of the bodies of the hostages, Hamas has said this: "We hold the criminal terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu and the biased American administration responsible for the failure of the negotiations to stop the aggression against our people and to release the prisoners in an exchange. We also hold him fully responsible for the lives of the prisoners who were killed by his army's bullets." Negotiations over a ceasefire in Gaza have stalled in recent months as Israel has added impossible demands to a framework agreed by both parties in July. These include a permanent Israeli military presence on the Philadelphia corridor separating Gaza from Egypt and in the Netzarim corridor splitting the territory of Gaza in 2. And according to the Times of Israel, Netanyahu confirmed his priorities in a cabinet meeting last week. He reportedly told cabinet ministers that he values keeping control of Gazan territory like the Philadelphia corridor over and above the return of the hostages. The cabinet backed the prime minister's strategy, but Defense Minister Yoav Gallant accused them of condemning the remaining hostages to die. These developments seem to have led to a change in tone from US President Joe Biden. Speaking to reporters at the White House today, he said this:
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
According to the Washington Post, US officials are also at the end of their rope. They plan to present a take-it-or-leave-it ceasefire deal soon, saying the US may walk away from negotiations if it isn't accepted. I'm joined now by the Israeli journalist and author Gideon Levy. Thank you so much for joining us, Gideon. How significant are the protests and strikes taking place right now in Israel?
Less than it seems from the outside. Would it continue? in the same energy, then it might be influential. But I'm quite skeptical that it will not last with the same energy for many days. And then Netanyahu can totally ignore it. Let's remember two major facts. A, those protesters are not Netanyahu's political base, and therefore he does not care too much about them. And secondly, listen to the content of their protest. Their protest never mentions the victims of Gaza, never mentions the crimes of war, never mentions the starvation, the mass killing, and the 40,000 people dead in Gaza. It's all about releasing the hostages. And this by itself is very disappointing.
I've seen sort of lots of commentary, especially from Palestinians, actually sort of saying, yeah, these people are out protesting for 6 hostages. Why weren't they protesting, or why haven't they been protesting for 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza? I suppose at the same time, this potentially is Netanyahu's political vulnerability, right? Because, as you know so well, Israelis don't seem to care very much about Palestinians. They do care more about the hostages. So is it this that Netanyahu should be worried about, the condition of the hostages when they die? Is that where his weakness is, let's say?
No, because Netanyahu's camp, and it's half of the people, roughly speaking, Netanyahu's supporters, Netanyahu's political base are, first of all, they are very solid in their support to him. They will follow him blindly. They are totally convinced that he's doing the right thing, and this will not scratch his camp. And as long as his camp remains solid, there is no room for hope to replace him or to make him resign.
And why does the Netanyahu camp, care less about the hostage? Is it sort of the sort of demographic background of the hostages? That they're more sort of from the liberal parts of Israeli society, or is something else going on? Why isn't this an issue that seems to really strike a chord with Netanyahu's base?
Under the surface, it is also this. I wouldn't like to say it's only this, but yes, they are from the kibbutzim, they are from the left. I can assure you one thing, without any doubts. Would the hostages be settlers from the West Bank, they would have been released long time ago, many months ago. No doubts about this. But, finally, it's also, I don't want to portray some people as not caring at all about the hostages. That's not the case. It's a question of priorities. And their priority, they believe Netanyahu, who claims that we should sacrifice the hostages for a more secure future, which is obviously rubbish, but that's the way those people believe.
Where are you sort of currently in terms of thinking about this ceasefire, which we've been hearing about for months and months and months, and it seems to be all talk, nothing really happens. So the latest news is the United States saying they're going to present a take it or leave it offer to Israel, and saying that there's they're impatient with Netanyahu. Does that seem remotely significant to you?
I guess you can by now guess my answer. Not at all. The Americans' behavior in this crisis is a very sad joke. That's the truth. I tend to believe that President Biden really wants to end the war, really wants to end the suffering of the people of Gaza. I don't think he is more cynical than other politicians, for sure. I think he has also a very special soft point toward Israel, all very nice. But the United States is supplying Israel with arms and ammunitions like never before in a total unconditioned way. If you do so, you cannot be taken seriously in asking to stop a war. If you arm someone, you mean that he's going to use those arms and not to stop the war. And therefore, this hypocrisy is not being taken serious even by Israel. So Biden said so. Netanyahu can easily ignore it. He knows it will not be followed by any measures.
You're giving a very pessimistic analysis. It's one I find very persuasive. It seems to just be a realistic analysis to me. But I suppose, so where do you see this going, given those sort of assumptions or those sort of those sort of founding beliefs which you have about how Israeli politics works, how international politics works. I mean, this war can't go on forever, presumably. Something has to change at some point. But where do you see this going now?
The truth is that I don't have an answer. I know that wars are ended in a certain stage, but let's remember that it's almost a year now, and the end is not in the horizon. I don't see it. What do you do with the north, with the Hezbollah? What do you do with Gaza? Israel will really withdraw from the entire Gaza Strip. Israel will let Hamas continue to run Gaza. I mean, those are questions that can hardly find an answer. And therefore, sincerely, I don't have an answer. For a very long time, my only hope was that the international community will wake up and do something, and this will be the game changer. But unfortunately, I don't see this happening either.
The Labour Party have said they'll suspend 30 types of weapons going to Israel, but still keep sending 300 types of weapons. So I assume that's not the kind of thing that will have any influence on the Israeli government. I suppose, Gideon, because we'll have lots of people watching this who are, outraged by what they're seeing, sort of waking up and seeing these images and sort of really wanting to do something. Do you have a perspective, sort of as someone in Israel incredibly critical of what the Israeli government is doing? What can ordinary people across the globe be doing to try and stop this?
Think about South Africa. Think about the first apartheid state. Think about how the international community dealt with this regime. Think how effective it was and try to do the same.
New Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has announced one of her first big moves, the scrapping of one-word judgments for schools by Ofsted.
As of today, with immediate effect, we will be ending the one-word judgments where it comes to schools, Ofsted judgments. So no longer will we have just that one word. We're going to move towards a better system that better captures a school's strengths, but also areas for improvement in the form of a report card that will commence next September. But at the start of this academic year, we are today making that change because I believe that parents need more information about what goes on within our schools, and the system that we've got at the moment just isn't working. It's too high stakes and it doesn't have a sharp enough focus on how we drive up standards in our schools, and that is incredibly important because I want all of our children to get a great education and a great start in life.
Pressure to scrap the one-word judgments, which rate schools as either outstanding, good, requires improvement or inadequate, have increased since the death of primary head teacher Ruth Perry in January last year. Perry died by suicide 54 days after Ofsted inspectors told her they planned to downgrade the school she led from outstanding to the lowest grade, inadequate. At the inquest into Perry's death, the coroner found that the inspection had contributed to the tragedy, and the coroner described Ofsted's conduct as rude and intimidating. The General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers, Paul Whiteman, has welcomed the government's announcement today, saying this: "We have been clear that simplistic one-word judgments are harmful, and we are pleased the government has taken swift action to remove them." The move has also been welcomed by former Ofsted Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman.
This shouldn't be about simply putting the interests of schools and their staff ahead of children. It's really important that inspection is first and foremost for children. But I believe that you can do that provided you have this full set of judgments. The other thing that I think is implied by this announcement is that the short, ungraded inspections that were all government would fund Ofsted to do for most schools will be scrapped so that it can do a full set of judgments in every inspection.
And to what extent do you think the government is softening the consequences of inspections?
It's clear from the announcement that that ratchet of the second requires improvement judgment leading to intervention is being taken out. I advise government strongly against putting it in the first place. It's also clear that they will rightly be keeping the power to intervene for schools with serious problems. And of course, that's a very necessary protection for children and their parents.
Aaron, this all seems fairly reasonable. Sort of looking at Twitter today, it seems like people from lots of different parts of the political spectrum say, yeah, to be honest, moving away from these one-word judgments by Ofsted seems smart. I mean, do you have a take which is more controversial than that?
No, completely non-controversial take, Michael. Imagine if we said, you know what, we're not going to do SATs or GCSEs, A-levels like we do them right now. What we're going to do instead is we're just going to say, you'll sit the exam and we're going to call the kid smart, okay, or stupid. That's it, right? That's it. Well, that's not rich information. It's not particularly helpful. It doesn't really give us much clarity as to where their strengths and weaknesses lie. So, it's really daft. I've seen some takes on Twitter saying, this is for teachers, not for parents. I think parents want more information than a single word. I personally find it very strange. Where we live, there are primary schools which are adequate, and all the really exceptional ones are elsewhere. I mean, I want to know, you can access the reports, but I don't want to access every report of every school. I'd like a little bit more information at a surface level. A paragraph would be nice. So look, it's very odd that we give more detailed, complex information for a kid doing SATs or GCSEs than we do for an entire school. So this is great. It's for the teachers, yes, but I also think parents benefit.
All right, let's look at something more divisive now, because the government's changes to Ofsted's inspections have been welcomed by the teaching profession and most reasonable people, it seems. But the teaching profession might be less thrilled by an experiment taking place at David Game College. That's a private school in London.
This is about to become the UK's first teacherless classroom, where 20 GCSE students will spend the year being taught by artificial intelligence instead of human teachers.
What we're attempting to do is to use AI in key subjects at GCSE. The three sciences, maths, and English and computer science and possibly geography.
The platforms learn what each student excels in and what they need more help with, and then it adapts their lessons for the term. Strong topics are moved to the end of term so they can be revised, while weak topics will be tackled more immediately. And each student's lesson plan is bespoke to them. GCSE students have been testing out the new tech.
Teachers don't know exactly precisely what I'm unable and able to do, where the AI can just figure out just by a few questions what I'm weak in and what are my strong points. And it helps me develop into a much smarter student.
Although there won't be teachers in the classroom, there will be 3 learning coaches to help with behaviour and softer subjects that AI might struggle with.
They're not being taught subjects by the learning coaches, but we are covering soft skills like public speaking, debate, and the really important personal aspects of a person that you really want to bring out and develop, and turning young people into young adults.
Some people disagree and say removing teachers from the equation will harm students in the long run. Chris McGovern was a head teacher and an educational advisor to Number 10. Now he campaigns against ideas like this.
Children will lose a great deal from that AI experience. They need to have teachers, they need to interact with other children, and that's fundamental. The problem with the AI and the computer screen is that it is a machine and it's inert. So you're straight away dehumanizing the process of learning. It's a soulless, bleak future if it's going to be along the AI path only.
So I was looking at the comments while we were showing that clip. Most people appalled. But Magic Pocket says this is actually a great shift in education if it's overseen properly. So some disagreement. Aaron, where do you stand? Is this a smart use of technology or a slippery slope into an educational robot dystopia?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. People just doing their maths homework like with these, advisors, Michael Walker. If Michael Walker pays £1,800 a month in rent and he earns £1,600, and no. And I've got a picture of Michael there walking around his house.
As long as I'm on the national curriculum, I'm fine with it, to be honest.
It's a big break, right? Big deal. Name recognition goes through the roof. Seriously, there are obviously applications for AI in education. Marking is one, right? I mean, my God, we can reallocate immense amounts of time and resources away from that. Teachers' time is incredibly valuable. Marking less, fantastic. Obviously, some quality control, you look at it and so on, but I can see how AI would make a massive, massive difference there. But the point that gentleman makes about being in a classroom, not merely consisting in input, output, right? There's also the soft skills of being with your classmates, being able to build rapport and a relationship with the teacher. Now, I'm not going to idealize what schooling is actually like. There are lots of experiences which don't look like that, but learning at its best Clearly involves other people, rapport, it's dynamic, it can be conversational, not all the time, obviously. Sometimes the kids need to be quiet and listen, but it can be. And great teaching is always going to be better, I think, than what we were saying there with the AI. Great teaching will always be better than that. So I think you all of a sudden look at a two-tier world of education, which of course to an extent we already have, where the ultra-rich will have in-person teaching, and the rest of us will get the equivalent, or our kids and grandkids will get the equivalent of fuel for our brains. You know, you have the 3-course meal with the fettuccine and the duck and the caviar. This person has fuel. That's kind of the division of educational resources and opportunity there. So I'm all for AI in the classroom, but what we just saw there a moment ago, it doesn't really appeal to me, Michael. I can't lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you're saying that it will be the private schools that get the real teachers, but that's a private school that's gone the AI direction. I suppose I feel like I don't know enough about this yet. I think if you were to replace teachers with AI, that would be a disaster. Not just because I like to protect jobs, but also because of all the social interaction that former head teacher was actually discussing there. The one way I could imagine this being a positive, and this is from working in a school for a year, is if this was done, say, I'm just completely picking this off the top of my head, but say if this was done an hour a day, and that meant that teachers got to have smaller classes or got to have more time to prepare their lessons. Because I think at the moment, especially in this country where you've got a teacher who's standing in front of 30 kids for 5 hours a day, yes, sometimes you'll have a brilliant teacher who's able to be dynamic for 5 hours every day and then mark all evening. It's very, very difficult life. I have so much respect for teachers, right? But if it were the case that, you could, some of the kids do this for a 1 hour a day, and then your lessons all get a bit more dynamic because teachers have a bit more time. I can see a world where you include some of this in your national curriculum and it's better than what we've currently got.
So firstly, about the private school argument, this is being done by a private school. I think it's purely as a gimmick, right? We use AI in teaching. I think it's probably a gimmick. That's just my view. Everything you just said there, Michael, I can see so many spaces and opportunities to use AI in teaching. Formulating lesson plans, marking, like you would massively increase and improve the productivity of a teacher. The one place where you shouldn't be having AI is inserting it into that relationship between the teacher and the student. Okay. Now you may have some AI that would be assisting a student with their homework, for instance, like like a personal AI, effectively. I totally get that, but the idea that all the students will be using the same AI application in a classroom, like I think it gets it completely wrong. The essence of the value in education is in that relationship between the teacher and the student, enthusing them, energizing them to be excited about a subject and to want to learn it, right? I think that is so, so valuable. And look, we talk about what technological automation means. It generally means that the sphere of uniquely human skills shrinks, and that those which remain human and can't be automated, the value grows. So, what you would see really in that world is that very, very informative, but also affectively enthusiastic and energizing teachers would all of a sudden get the dividend. They'd get the cash. They'd still be in a job. If you weren't like that, you're basically not a teacher. But Michael, like I say, I can see AI in so many places here, but in the actual teaching bit, it doesn't make sense to me.
Do you use Duolingo?
It's crap.
You think?
Yes.
I think it's great for practicing. I think you need something else to sort of like learn the rules, because it's not going to teach you that. But I think it's much better for practicing than, say, what my GCSE French classes were.
Well, that was also crap. But, in terms of me being able to learn languages, the thing that I've always benefited from is rote learning and self-directed study, verb drills, like with conjugations, and you learn the grammar and that's self-directed. Could a personal AI do that? Of course it could. Yeah, we're not that far away from technology being able to help in that regard. Absolutely. Would that personal AI give me enthusiasm and energy to learn the subject and to care about it and to want to learn more and to turn up? No.
The far right have won a German state election for the first time since the Second World War. That state is Thuringia in Germany's east. It's also where the Nazi Party won its first seat in 1927, nearly a century ago. The Alternative for Germany, or AfD, won a decisive victory, taking a third of the votes. That put the AfD nearly 10 points ahead of its nearest competitor, Angela Merkel's old party, the centre-right Christian Democrats. In third place was Germany's newest party, the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, with 16% of the vote. Meanwhile, the Left Party saw its vote collapse, dropping to 13% from the 31% it won in 2019. Also languishing was Olaf Scholz's Social Democratic SPD, with just 6% of the vote. The AfD will now hold a plurality of seats in Thuringia's state parliament, but well short of the majority required to govern, and they're unlikely to be part of any governing coalition because all other parties have ruled out working with the far right. That's not without reason. In May, the AfD's leader in Thuringia, Björn Höcke, was found guilty of using the Nazi slogan Alles für Deutschland at a rally. AfD politician says Germany should stop atoning for Nazi crimes. That's this article in The Guardian. He called the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin a, quote, monument of shame. And Thuringia's branch of the AfD is one of 3 currently under investigation by Germany's security agency for being, quote, proven right-wing extremist. But Thuringia's election wasn't the only success for the AfD. In neighbouring Saxony, they came a close second, just 1 percentage point behind the Christian Democrats. The AfD tripled its vote share, going from under 10% of the vote in 2019 to 30% today. Again, coming third was the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance. At the same time, the left vote collapsed from around 20% to less than 5%. The Social Democratic vote share roughly halved. In both Thuringia and Saxony, the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance now holds a great deal of power and may well be kingmaker in any CDU-led alliance aimed at keeping the 2 state governments functioning. And that's pretty impressive for a party that was only founded in January this year. Named after its founder and former Left Party member of the Bundestag, Sarah Wagenknecht, the alliance promises left-wing policies on the economy mixed with anti-migrant sentiment. Wagenknecht has called for greater social welfare and higher taxes on the wealthy, but like the AfD, she's also promoted tougher restrictions on immigration as well as a reversal of Germany's green policies. And she's called for the withdrawal of military funding for Ukraine. That mix of policies appears to have drawn people away from the more socially progressive Left Party in both of these state elections. I'm joined now by James Jackson, a freelance journalist based in Germany and host of Mad in Germany on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, James. How significant are these results in terms of the national politics of Germany?
This is a historic result in the sense that Germany has not elected a far-right state government since the Second World War. And so a lot of people are seeing parallels between this and the rise of the right elsewhere. The UK may be sort of bucking the trend on this, but then we saw these racial pogroms recently. So there are parallels to be drawn. I think this could also impact the EU and wider foreign policy, particularly the Ukraine war. So although this is a local election or a state election, I think it will have national results in Germany and then an international knock-on effect.
Can you talk to us about the AfD? How should we understand them? So as far as I understand, they were sort of started by a bunch of anti-EU economists, but now they've got sort of leaders, at least on a local level, who are being explicitly sort of flirting with Nazism. I mean, are they a neo-Nazi party?
I think there are definitely neo-Nazis within the party. In Germany, the Office of Constitutional Protection has said that certain groups are right-wing extremists, and that's actually true of Thuringia, where they came first. So actually, I think one thing that's unique about the AfD is that radicalism doesn't seem to put off their voters. If anything, it attracts them. And of course, Eastern Germany was a hotbed of neo-Nazism in the 90s after reunification. There's still plenty of attacks on migrants happening out there.
With 30% of people voting for the far right, and these are actually, interestingly, really high turnout elections, weren't they? It was sort of 74% turnout, which is something you'd never get in a local election in the UK or a regional election in the UK. So clearly there are a lot of people voting for this party. I mean, they can't all be people who are attracted to sort of neo-Nazi type radicalism. There must be, they must be appealing to a broader section of society as well, presumably.
Yes, about 30% of people did vote for them, but of course that means that 70% of people voted against them. Actually, if you look at polls, the CDU, which came second, that's the Conservative Christian Democrats, about half of their voters in both of the states that voted wanted to, stop the AFD. So there's also plenty of people who don't want the AFD to be in power. They got around 30%, which is very high, but it's still not a majority under a proportional representative system like we have over here. The question is, what do AFD voters want? Is it just a protest, or is it also they like the ideas? And I think it's a bit of both. I mean, Germany's economy is not doing very well at the moment. They had some of the worst inflation in Europe, in this part of Europe, and they had some of the worst growth in Europe, in this part of Europe. And so the economist Isabella Weber actually says that this is the worst price shock Germans have experienced since the war. And, some people say that Germany has a bit of a psychological relationship to inflation because of the hyperinflation of the Weimar period. So ultimately, I think a lot of people in Eastern Germany do not want to see migration, which is a huge political issue here, as well as they don't like Ukraine. They don't want to give Western support for Ukraine and Germany to be involved in this and the kind of have a Western-leaning foreign policy.
Why are the AfD more popular in the east of Germany, so the former DDR?
One factor is the fact that they have less migration historically, because the DDR didn't bring in guest workers or working migrants as West Germany did, and so there's a bit more social resentment. You could also point to the fact that there's less attachment to the traditions of German democracy, of the Federal Republic. So parties like the SPD don't do very well in this region, especially also the Greens and the Free Democrats. So these kind of liberal parties do very badly. And so East Germany is a bit more of a testing ground. Of course, it wasn't just the AfD that did well in this election, also this new party, which is somewhat left-leaning, called the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance.
Let's talk about the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, because she was someone who came from Die Linke, so the left party. But she started this party, I understand, only sort of 2 months ago, and they've completely blown out of the water all the other left-wing parties standing. So the left have performed really badly. Die Linke, the left, the traditional left party, have performed really badly, as have the Social Democrats, as have the Greens. What's behind her success?
Sarah Wagenknecht has been a stalwart in the German media for about 10 years, and she's quite a good speaker. She hits these sort of left-wing populist notes of inequality and the rich, but she has also always been able to criticize migration, which, as I mentioned before, is a huge issue in East Germany and in Germany as a whole at the moment, particularly after recent terrorist attacks, which people have linked to migration. And her party basically split from what you might see as a more liberal left Die Linke, who are more pro-migration and a little bit softer on the issue of Ukraine. So she's really picked up exactly what the people in Die Linke in Eastern Germany are angry about, which is migration and support for Ukraine. And she presents it in a way that a lot of people can get behind. In fact, I saw another poll that said, it's this what people are attracted to is this left wing on economics, but also tough on migration.
Lots of people have talked about that for a while as sort of the quadrant on the political spectrum where loads of voters are and political parties don't tend to be. So I suppose many people wouldn't be surprised that she's mopped up quite a lot of support. Can we talk about the governing coalition? So obviously in Berlin, the government is made up of Social Democrats, Greens, and the Liberals. They're incredibly unpopular. They've done incredibly badly, all of the parties. I think the Greens and the Liberals didn't get into Parliament. The SPD sort of barely did. Into these local parliaments, these regional parliaments. So why are they so unpopular? Why do the German people seem to really hate their government at the moment?
The Traffic Light Coalition, as it's called, have always been pretty weak in these regions. I think they didn't do very well last time either. And these are not very populated regions in Germany. Thuringia has about the population of Hamburg. So I think we should be a little bit careful about applying this result as a rejection of the traffic light coalition totally. But what it has done, and what recent weeks have done, is they've definitely pushed the government to the right, particularly on the issue of migration. Even the Greens have called for reducing migration, and they're basically the liberal lefty party that's meant to be pro-migration. So there is a definite sense of dissatisfaction. The traffic light coalition has been really struggling to get anything done. There's been a lot of infighting, particularly between the Greens and the Free Democrats, who are the Liberals. Now, when I say they're the Liberals, I actually think it's fairer to say they're a Thatcherite party or Osborneite party, where they don't really believe in the state. And so it's been very hard to make any kind of compromises with them between the three parties when the finance minister, our version of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has blocked public spending alongside two left-leaning parties. And then the SPD, led by Chancellor Scholz, has been missing in action, really, and let their two coalition partners fight. Now, Scholz tried to present himself as the kind of heir to Merkel and stay above the fray, but he doesn't really have the political skill or the goodwill or the popularity among the German people to do that. And so what a lot of people see is this kind of pencil-pushing bureaucrat who isn't keeping the country together in what is quite a tough time with recent terrorist attacks.
Germany, for a while under Merkel, was sort of this sort of shining star of a European country that's welcoming to migrants and especially to refugees. I think sort of 1.5 million, mainly Syrians, were sort of accepted into Germany in 2015 and 2016. Is that over? I mean, has that argument just been lost now? It seems like it's not just a case of people voting for the FD, but now all the other parties are saying, okay, yeah, we're going to stop this now. And whoever wins the next election, there'll be much lower levels of migration in Germany than there had been previously. Is that your understanding?
I definitely think that German politics has swung towards the right on this migration issue. You used to have, a conservative Chancellor, Merkel, making the case for taking in refugees and migration in general. In fact, the Traffic Light Coalition really wanted initially to bring more migrants in. They reformed the citizenship law. They've gone on tours looking for workers because that is something that Germany needs. It's got an aging population. I think it's 2 workers for every pensioner, which is not boding well for the future of the German economy. But culturally, they've really struggled on some of these issues, even though some experts say the integration of particularly Syrians into the labour market has been pretty decent, and a lot of them have jobs. But Germany is quite, in certain regions, monocultural. There have been cases of crime which people and politicians often blame on migrants. Although I would say after Solingen, there was another incident in Siegen in West Germany where there was a knife attack on 4 people in the bus. And this was a German, ethnic German, if you will, who was having some kind of mental health attack and was stopped by some local youths. So in some cases, the media is, over-reporting these instances of so-called migrant crime, but that is what a lot of people are doing. And there's also entire far-right ecosystems. They have newspapers, they have Telegram groups. I think they're much more established in Germany than in the UK. And it has become a big political issue that, effectively the centre have given up all ground on because they think it's an argument they can't win. And the right have called for a national emergency after this attack in Solingen. But what one commentator pointed out is a few years ago, we had a terrorist attack in Hanau, which was by a neo-Nazi kind of conspiracy theorist that killed 9 people, almost all of them people of color. And no one was calling for a national emergency then. And in fact, it was the same time as Carnival. And people actually went to Carnival the next day as if nothing had happened. So there's a question about, are white people's lives being valued more?
Kemi Badenoch is still the bookies' favourite to be the next Tory leader, but she's launched her official campaign by engaging in beef with Doctor Who.
Until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
No, I will not shut up. when you have that type of cultural establishment trying to keep conservatives down, you need someone like me who's not afraid of Doctor Who or whoever, and who's going to take the fight to them and not let them try and keep us down. That's not going to happen with me. And also, it's not Badenoch, it's Badenoch. There's no bad in my name. I just want people to be clear on that.
Aaron, that's, I think, the first video that Kemi Badenoch has put out in her campaign. She's not scared of Doctor Who. Is this someone who's sort of presenting an image where they can be the next prime minister?
Does she want to run the country? I mean, it's an honest question, right? Or does she want to be some sort of micro-celebrity on the right that gets a few retweets? And I genuinely don't know. By the way, that question could apply to so many politicians out there right now. Do you want to run the country? Are you a serious person? And actually, I think many, many people on the Conservative right, Suella Braverman, I actually don't think they are interested in running anything. It's quite hard, as they found out over the last 14 years. So it just looks ridiculous. This is, first impressions count. You know, we're told that when you meet somebody, you make a pretty strong assessment of who they are within several seconds. Your initial pitch to the Tory membership, not the electorate, the Tory membership, is that you don't like David Tennant. Okay. And these people as well, they're so sour. All the stereotypes they try and throw out the radical left over the last 30, 40 years, like Viz magazine had militant, you know, sour, incapable of self-deprecation, incapable of humor. That's exactly what these people are. Smile. Say something that will make me laugh. It's impossible. They take themselves so incredibly seriously, but about the dumbest stuff. If you're going to take yourself that seriously, talk about macroeconomics, okay? Talk about public policy. Don't talk to me about Doctor Who.
On Wednesday, Conservative MPs will begin the first round of voting, and then we'll see the elimination of the candidate with the least number of votes. So I have to say, it's a contest that people don't seem particularly interested in at the moment. I suppose because the Conservatives seem so far away from power. It's the first Labour government we'd had in 14 years. People aren't particularly keen to obsess about the Conservative Party. Me neither, I have to say. But it'll be interesting. It's good to see them all fight like rats in a sack. A lifelong campaigner for Palestine, Jeremy Corbyn, now sits as an independent MP in Parliament. Alongside him are 4 other new independent MPs voted into Westminster on a pro-Palestinian platform. So it makes sense that their common political interests have led to this announcement. Jeremy Corbyn will create a formal alliance with Shaukat Adam, Ayub Khan, Adnan Hussain and Iqbal Mohammed, promising to also campaign on the 2-child benefit cap and austerity. Explaining the move, the 5 MPs said this: "Millions of people are crying out for a real alternative to austerity, inequality and war, and their voices deserve to be heard. As individuals, we were voted by our constituents to represent their concerns in Parliament on these matters and more, and we believe that as a collective group we can carry on doing this with greater effect. The more MPs who are prepared to stand up for these principles, the better. Our door is always open to other MPs who believe in a more equal and peaceful world." The Alliance has also written to Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle asking to be treated as a bloc in the House and requesting as much speaking time as small parties like Reform and the Greens. Obviously the same size as both, really. Reform have 5, the Greens have 4, and now the Independent Alliance have 5. Hoyle has yet to respond, but the independent MPs have already attracted the attention of another sitting MP. This was Kemi Badenoch at her leadership campaign launch today.
Laws brought in to protect everyone were used by left-wingers to protect certain groups over others. We've seen in history what happens when governments do this. That must not happen here. And that is why, when everyone was talking about the 5 new MPs from Reform, I was far, far more worried about the 5 new MPs elected on the back of sectarian Islamist politics, alien ideas that have no place here.
Now, alien ideas that have no place here. Now, those 5 MPs were not elected on Islamist politics, right? They were elected on a platform of, we want to stop sending arms to Israel to carry out a genocidal war. That's not Islamism. Other than Jeremy Corbyn, they are Muslims. Other than Jeremy Corbyn, I think principally their support came from Muslim communities. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's would a little bit, but obviously he has broader appeal because he's a very famous person. The other 4 came somewhat by surprise, presumably because they were well networked in particular communities in their constituencies, right? But there's nothing sinister about that. They didn't stand for Islamist politics. They stood for peace in the Middle East. Aaron, I suppose two things to talk about here. This alliance, this independent alliance becoming formal, and Kemi Badenoch's, I think, pretty outrageous smearing of these 5 independent MPs.
She's a clown. She's not a serious person. Most of the people running to be Tory leader are clowns. I mean, even if you look at something like Tom Tugendhat, who I think is unique in so much as he has a positive approval rating. Not many people know about the guy, but those who do seem to dislike him less than the other ones. He doesn't really have any strong opinions beyond not liking Russia and China. Okay. Tom Tugendhat, what would you do for the higher education sector in this country, which is on its arse? I don't know. You want to be the prime minister of a country. You want to be the leader of a political party, which by many measures is the most successful in Western European history. I don't know. We'll have to double check that one. Sort of Bradman, again, not serious. These are just not serious people. They're not serious people. They just go around calling people names. That's what they do. They're not serious. They can't solve problems. They can't make people better off. They can't even solve the problems that they try and draw attention to get people really riled up, like immigration. What is their solution, for instance, to the quote-unquote small boats crisis? They never have one. And also, by the way, Kemi Badenoch, she was asked about what she would like to get immigration down to. David Cameron said the tens of thousands, of course, in 2010. She said, I wouldn't put a number on it. You can't manage what you don't measure. If you're going to make migration an issue, if you're going to say it's too high, you should put a number on it, right? You should. This is the number one issue. We have to address it. I care about it a lot. The people that will vote for me and make me Tory leader, they really care about it. We really care about it so much we can't put a number on it. Okay. I mean, they're not serious. This is about getting headlines. It's about getting retweets. That is now what drives the Conservative Party. What will get the most, what will cause the most division and polarization on Twitter? X. That's now their modus operandi in terms of doing politics. And in terms of these 5 people, like say, Jeremy Corbyn, not a Muslim, it seems to me that from Badenoch's comments, Michael, if you're a Muslim, you want to end the bloodshed, the genocide in Gaza, and you have the political wherewithal, capability, luck, good fortune, skill, all of the above, social networks, to become an elected member of parliament. Not easy as an independent, by the way. Almost never happens at Westminster elections. Can happen in by-elections. Almost never happens at Westminster elections. If you have all those things, Muslim, anti-genocide, good at politics, well, therefore, I'm afraid, you're an Islamist. My, oh my, Michael, how the definition has changed. It used to mean you're a member of Al-Qaeda. Now it means somebody who's opposed to a genocide and is good at getting other votes in Blackburn. I know that, words can shift meaning, but that's a pretty big shift in a pretty small space of time.
Islamists, they used to say about them, they hate our democracy. They can't stand to live in a democratic society. Okay, well, some Muslims who aren't Islamists, by the way, have stood for election, got elected on an issue which I think is very important, and they're smeared as Islamists for taking part in our democratic process. It seems like you can't win. An update on a story we discussed earlier, those protests in Israel, the killing of the 6 hostages. Netanyahu is still taking part, actually, in a very lengthy press conference. He has asked for forgiveness for the deaths of the 6 hostages whose bodies were retrieved from Gaza on Saturday. And we said there would be no compromise on Israel's demand for military control over Gaza's border with Egypt. Described Hamas as trying to split Israel's government and society. So a reference to the huge protests sweeping the country. So basically saying, anyone protesting out in the street, you're pawns of Hamas's strategy. I mean, he's pledged not to surrender to domestic or international pressure and vowed that Hamas would pay a heavy price for the killing of the hostages. This is very much in line with what Gideon Levy was telling me earlier in the show, which is that Netanyahu will have absolutely no interest whatsoever in listening to these protesters because, as Gideon Levy said, they're not his base. Right? His base is a very different part of society. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure, Michael. And it's just something to think about at the end of the show. You can't protest, you can't do direct action, and you definitely can't run for public office. Strange people, these Tory politicians, aren't they?
Well, you can't run for public office and win. I think if these guys had run for public office and lost, they wouldn't be smeared as Islamists. They'd just be saying, these independents. But if you do, there's a threshold whereby if you actually win more votes than one of the major parties, that's the point at which you become an Islamist. Before that, you're a protest vote, and then suddenly after that, you're incredibly dangerous. Thank you, everyone, for watching this evening. Aaron will be back tomorrow to host the show from 6 p.m. For now, you've been watching Novara Media. Good night.